Well, good evening, everyone. I hope you'll be able to hear this all right, and I hope you enjoy more of a return to normalcy, perhaps for us. I'm going to continue our study on David, and we're going to be reading and studying about 2 Samuel chapters 1 through 4. Now, I'm going to suggest something for you now that you cannot do when it's our regular time in class, and that is for you to pause this and sit down and read the first four chapters. They're not very long, they're very interesting, and they're going to cover the points that I'm going to go through with you fairly quickly. I I don't want to keep things long. I know I have a captive audience when you are at the church building, and that's not true right now. And I want to be respectful for your time as well. But at any rate, go ahead, pause it if you like, read those chapters, and then when you're ready to begin, I'll be started on the lesson. Chapter 1. The battle has taken place. Saul and his sons are dead. David finds out about it. And one of the things he finds out about Saul's death is when a young Amalekite man comes and tells him the occasion of how Saul died. Now, what he tells is a little bit different from what we're presented in the last chapter of 1 Samuel. And in that chapter, we're told that Saul was afraid of what the Philistines might do when they captured him. So he asked his armor bearer to kill him. Well, the armor bearer would not do that. So Saul fell on his own sword. It appeared that he was dead, so his armor bearer took his own life after that. And that's presented as the way that Saul died. The Philistines came, chopped off Saul's head, took it away. The men of Jabesh Gilead heard about this. Some of their valiant men marched all night and took from the wall the bodies of Saul and his sons. They burned them. They buried the bones in a very special place, safe from the Philistines doing further injustice to their bodies. Now, what the Amalekite tells us is that he came upon Saul and his sons, and that the sons were dead, and Saul was still alive. But Saul was mortally wounded, and he was suffering, and he asked for the Amalekite to end his life, and the Amalekite did, and then took some things from Saul to identify that they had actually come from Saul himself when he went to tell David the story of what happened. Both accounts could be true, because it might have appeared to the armor bearer that Saul was dead when actually he wasn't. So we're going to assume that both accounts are true, and David gets the word of how Saul died. He immediately reacts with grief. It's an honest expression of his heart, and he then questions the Amalekite further and asks him a question about how he was so unafraid to put his hand against the Lord's anointed. He then ordered one of his young men there to fall upon the Amalekite, in other words, to execute him, and he did. And David said, "This is on your own head, because you testified against yourself that you killed the Lord's anointed." David then wrote a song of praise about the courage and the deaths of Saul and his sons, particularly Jonathan. It's called the Song of the Bow, and he said to teach this to the sons of Judah, the tribe from which he came. And in the song, if you read that, beginning around verse 19 to the end of the chapter, the song is nothing but positive about Saul and his sons. David leaves no room to praise himself here. It is just solely to show his honor to the first king of Israel. Now, chapter 2, David talks with the Lord, and he asks the Lord whether he should go to the area of Judah. And the Lord told him yes. David then asked him where in particular he should go. So David went back to his own people, and when he did that, he also found out about what the men of Jabesh Gilead did. Now, when he did find that out from them, the men of Jabesh Gilead, if they thought that David and Saul were such great enemies, they might have feared David. But he sent word to them immediately, letting them know that there was no ill will between them, and letting them know how much he respected and appreciated what they did to honor Saul. So he told them, I will do good for you. What follows next is Abner, the king of, or not the king, but rather the general of Saul's army, places Saul's son Ishbosheth over the kingdom. And battles begin to ensue. David's battles are fought by his men, led by Joab. And we have an account about one particular battle and how that ended up making Joab and Abner blood enemies. But later on, we find that David's house is growing stronger, Saul's house is growing weaker. The people are not really backing Ishbosheth like they had Saul, and because it's the Lord's will, David and his men are beginning to see more and more of an advantage over them. Now, there's a falling out between Ishbosheth and Abner in chapter 3. And because of that, Abner makes an agreement with David to work toward turning over the kingdom that once belonged to Saul over to David. David has a feast. He welcomes Abner with peace. They have something of an agreement in mind. Abner leaves, and Joab finds out about it. And Joab secretly calls Abner and kills him because of what Abner had done to one of Joab's family members. David is very angry when he finds out about this. He laments Abner's death immediately. He tells Joab and his family that they are to show remorse and grief publicly for Abner's death. And they do that, and we're told that the people believed that David really did not have it in his heart to kill Abner, and we are told that this pleased them, as did almost everything that David did. Well, with the death of Abner, a couple of wicked men sneak into the house of Ishbosheth in chapter 4, and they put him to death on his bed. They bring his head to David, thinking that if you kill the enemy of the king, he's going to reward you. But David's reminded them how he treated a man who came back with news of how he had put to death Saul. And he said, how much more do you think you're going to be punished when you have entered into the house of a righteous man and put him to death on his own bed? He then had those men executed, and the people understand that it is not David's will to act so horribly towards Saul and his family. And this is going to set the stage for David becoming king over a united Israel. Now, there's some good lessons to learn from this. David, by showing genuine remorse to Saul and Jonathan's deaths, holding the Amalekite responsible for killing Saul, rewarding the men of Jabesh Gilead, these were all things that were going to set well in the minds of Israel. David's always thinking about the long-term effect of his actions. He's thinking about how people are going to judge him in the light of history. And it's a good thing for us to think about as well. When you and I take our own revenge, when we get even, we know how that's going to look in the long term. But David never acts in that way. And I think he intentionally distances himself from all these battles because he does not want to be seen as the king who was fighting against the people that he is seeking to rule over. He shows us also that he never stops talking to God, never stops seeking to know what God wants him to do. And that is, again, something that comes genuinely from David's heart. You can't fake that. You've got to live that. That's got to be just you in your natural state. Now, David is doing his best to unite his people, because when people came telling him they got rid of his enemies, he said, no, no, no. God is the one who is keeping me safe. God is the one who delivers me from my enemies. I don't need any of you doing something against someone when it's not your place to do it, because I've got trust in God. And this is going to help unite the kingdom. This is going to cement David in the hearts of all the people and make a unity come about that otherwise would have been impossible to even think about. To have two sides, two opposite sides, in basically what was a civil war, and have one of those leaders remain in power and lead everyone. That would probably not happen unless it was from God. And we know that this was. Now, if the Lord is willing, next week we will pick up on the story of David in chapter 5, when the coming together of the kingdom actually takes place and what all happens as a result. I thank you guys for watching this. I hope you're doing well. We've been praying about an end to this coronavirus crisis at a time when we can all get back together again. And let me tell you something, when we do get back together, it's going to be very special. We're going to make it the special time that it is when all of God's singers get together again. Thank you, and God bless you.